Hello, welcome back, and it's a pleasure to welcome to the studio Pastor Rebekah Liu. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Or should I say, my Chinese has deserted me. Ni hao.
Ni hao.
Ni hao.
Yes. How are you?
I'm very well. Now, Rebekah, you've just come over from China where you're pastoring a church not far from Shanghai City, is that right?
3 hours flight from Shanghai, southwestern
flight.
China, near Tibet. That's my hometown.
Oh, right. Way out there. Okay. And how many people are in this church?
This is a new church. We just started. We had 16 church members to start with, but every Sabbath we have like 60. Even in the hottest summer, because we just started April 27.
Okay.
So we have 60 attending the Sabbath.
Okay, so just a fairly small church at this
Just
stage.
very small church.
Now, you're a Seventh-day Adventist pastor.
Yes.
How many Seventh-day Adventists are there in China? Right now?
400,000.
400,000?
Yes.
Wow, that's a lot. That's about as much as we have, I think, in Australia, New Zealand, and all the Pacific Islands.
Yeah, but comparing with Chinese population, it's really small.
Still very small, yeah. And there are some very large congregations there, aren't there, in China?
Yes, in the largest one in northeastern China, it's pastored by a women pastor, Pastor Hao, and the church is the biggest Christian church in China.
Oh,
and
wow.
it can accommodate 4,000 church members.
And does it accommodate 4,000 regularly?
Yes, every community service once a quarter. 4,000 church members.
Wow, that's huge. Now, I've got to ask you, and I know this is politically sensitive for you and for Christians in China, but we often, on this program, we often have news stories about Christians being persecuted in different countries, and including China sometimes. But then other times we hear, things are wonderful, things are opening up, and we wonder, is this just sort of government propaganda? I know it's television and you can't maybe say everything, but can you give us some idea of the truth of what's happening for Christians in China?
I think for Christians in general, now the policies are more open, but we do have some religious restrictions, such as we cannot hold public evangelism in China, so we go for friendship evangelism. And then for Adventist church, in the 1990s, in the 1980s, the persecution really went, we really were persecuted by the local government because of lack of education for them, and also because they are not acquainted with us. And after so many years, they got acquainted with us, so we are getting better, and normally we are recognized by the church government. But for some evangelical churches, because they tend to be underground and to have house churches, I think they still suffer different degrees of persecution. I think it all depends upon the local government. The central government, they are very open. In Beijing, like in Beijing, situation is good for some official Sunday-keeping churches. And so I would say it depends upon the local situation.
Okay,
and it's much better than before.
The national government for the whole country is definitely moving towards more openness.
Yes.
But provincial governments or local governments, some are pretty tough.
Yeah, depends upon their relationship, their personal understanding about Christianity.
Okay, all right. So is the Seventh-day Adventist Church associated with the official government organisation there, the Three Self Patriotic Movement, or
yes,
not?
We are one of the first to join the Three Self movement in the 1950s. Yeah, but some of us, very few people among Adventist church, there are some people who refuse to join the Three Self Church, and they have their freedom to do that.
Okay, so there is an underground Adventist church.
Yes, very
and
few
an official.
people. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Now, you say that public evangelism is basically forbidden, but nevertheless, the church, just one denomination, the Seventh-day Adventist Church in China is 400,000, and I understand there are millions and millions of Catholics, of other Protestants.
Yes.
How has the church managed to grow so large under those sort of conditions?
Yeah, actually, we, according to some optimistic calculation, outside China or inside China, they say we have 100 million Christians in China, but the conservative figure is 70 million and I more go for the 70 million.
So between 70 and 100
Yes.
million.
Yes, million.
That is huge.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
But when you consider Chinese population as 1.5 billion, it's very small. So
Is it the case, Rebekah, that I think I've heard this somewhere, that the national government at least recognises that religion can actually be a force for positive, for
Yes.
social good in the community, and is encouraging churches in some ways because maybe there are issues with crime or family breakdown, and they feel the church is actually a positive force?
And nowadays, the government began to recognize that one. But coming back to your question just now, you asked about how the Christian churches, Catholic
Yes.
churches were doing evangelism.
Yeah.
We go for personal evangelism, friendship evangelism, and according to missiologists, that's the most effective way.
That's right.
And people stay because
in
of
the
that.
West too, we often hear that that's the way to
so
do it.
Chinese Adventists and Chinese Christians are forced by the government to do the best way.
Oh, well, there you
evangelism.
go. Wow. Okay. Now you're a woman and a pastor.
Yes, I was ordained in 2010.
Okay. Right now, of course, at a world level, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is discussing whether or not we want to ordain pastors, and nevertheless, because China has a separate structure
Yes.
from the rest of the world church, you've already been doing it. What brought that on, and how's it been going?
Our first woman pastor was ordained in the 1980s.
Okay.
And
That long ago?
Yeah, long time ago.
Yeah.
And she's still alive. She's more than 80 years old. And Chinese are very practical. Sometimes we call ourselves pragmatic.
Yeah, sure.
So whatever works.
If it works, do it.
We will do it.
Yeah.
And there's not even one patriarch in Chinese Adventist church, like Pastor David Lin, very famous for some Western missionaries, and also my father-in-law, who was the second to Pastor David Lin in China. Also, both of them passed away 2 years ago, a year ago. None of them were opposing to the woman ordination. When they think about an ordination, they always think this is the need of the church, let's ordain. There's nothing to think about if this pastor is a woman or not. So I consider myself as a pastor. I'm not a woman pastor, I'm a pastor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what percentage of church leaders in China, just take your denomination for example, are women as opposed to male pastors?
In terms of church leaders, without any regard to ordination,
Okay.
Elders and deacons and pastors, lay pastors, I think is 2/3 of the leadership.
2/3?
2/3.
Wow.
And also our church membership in terms of ladies, we have 2/3 of the church membership are ladies. And we have 112 ordained pastors in China right now in this year. And we have among them 20 women ordained pastors.
Wow.
Yeah. So 18%.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Pastor Rebekah Liu, for just that little insight into the situation in China for churches.
It's my honor. Thank you for interviewing me.
We'll be back straight after the break.